What do you think? Hello and welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon, and I have a very special guest with me today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Tammy's dad, Bill Coxon, over here in London, Ontario.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Dad.
It's been great to have you visit.
It's been nice to visit. I actually haven't been over since before COVID, so it's been nice to get back together.
Yeah, it's been good.
So you're kind of to blame for this whole My Tiny Bottles project. Grandma died in 2019, and I remembered her bottles. I've talked about this on lots of other episodes. I remembered the bottles that she was collecting, and I got to thinking at some point, whatever happened to Grandma's minis? And I called you up and asked you that question, and what happened next?
I knew they were somewhere. My mom was living with my younger sister, and I knew that they were there. They were in storage for years, and I knew they were out of it, so I figured they had them, and I just had to contact her and find out where they were.
So you called up Aunt Wendy, and she was like, were they on a porch? Were they in the back room? Like, where were they?
They had been in a garage.
Yeah.
They had been in a outdoor a covered storage facility that wasn't climate controlled.
Right? This is my guess based on the condition of some of these.
But they had them back home, I think, out in the garage at one time, So
Dad comes to visit me in November of 2021, and he comes in with a little box, and it's got some bottles in it. I'm super excited. I start tearing through them, and then what do you say?
I've got 2 more big bins out in the cars.
I don't know how he got across the Canadian border with all these little bottles. Did they ask you? Did
No.
you have to declare them?
No.
No. Well, that's good. How do you explain that? Yeah, I only have, my legal limit, but it's just all in 50 ml samples. All right. Well, the reason that I wanted to taste this particular bottle with you is a couple reasons. This is Canadian Club, which is a Canadian whiskey. And you are what we in Canada call rye. And you indeed are a fan of rye.
I have been many, many years ago. I've graduated more to wine now, but in my older years.
But a rye and ginger, my whole family, I remember everybody drinking rye and gingers. That was actually why the first cocktail that I tried really as I got into cocktails. I was like, oh, this one has rye in it. I know what rye is. And that was in America. It turns out rye there is totally different. But the main reason that I was like, this is the bottle that I have to taste with my dad is because it was distilled in 1972, which was the year I was born. So Canadian law at the time required a bottled in bond strip, and it would be the age of the youngest whiskey in the bottle. And Canadian whiskey is all about blending. It's got a lot of complicated steps with blending. So there could well be some here that's quite a bit older than 6 years. But the minimum is the 1972. And based on other bottles that I found online that look like this is probably 6-year-old whiskey, even though it doesn't say that in there. So some of it could have been distilled before, but minimum 1972. So 1978, this bottle was probably purchased. Would that have been you giving it to Grandma?
I don't know. My sister, again, she'd go to Cuba, to different places, and bring back bottles. I'd go down to the States. Jamboree in the Hills is one place, and brought many bottles back. You'd be in a liquor store, you'd just see a bottle and pick it up, and you know.
And I love the fact that so many of the bottles I think you guys chose based on whether they were interesting looking rather than you thought what was inside would taste good. Because Grandma, how's she feeling right now? She called at us opening.
I don't think so. My sister thought it was strange, and I said, "You've got to watch the videos, and you'll see Grandma's legacy. Somebody's getting to know her."
Yeah, because she never ever drank these.
No.
Did you ever steal a nip?
I never did, but my dad did. And when he was found out, he was in big trouble.
So do you know what happened with the bottles? Did she keep them after he drank them, or did
No,
she move
no,
them?
they had to be full. They had to be full.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Any other things you can talk about how Grandma got started with the collecting or anything?
I'm not sure where the first one came from, to tell you the truth. Once I found her starting them, I started to bring them back. They went to every yard sale they could find and picked up the old spice racks that were on the wall. They'd paint them black, and they were her display cases for them. So once she started and posted them on the wall, I started to bring them back from wherever I went.
Yeah, I mean, I collect tiki mugs and cocktail shakers, and I can say once you have a collection, everybody knows what to get you for every occasion. And pretty soon you run out of space for your collection.
We would actually wrap them one at a time and make a bonbon out of them to put in their Christmas stock.
Right, and a little fringe the
yeah.
little ends of them. Yep, and Grandma would be there unwrapping, you know, 6, 8 of these little bottles. But 1972 is kind of a point where we're just kind of coming out of the golden age of Canadian whiskey. So that post-Prohibition, post-World War II period in particular, people start drinking a lot of Canadian whiskey. And then whiskey kind of dies off as people start turning to lighter spirits like vodka and gin and things like that. And the whiskeys start to get lighter. In America, we have these sort of basically, you know, a little bit of whiskey mixed with vodka. But Canadian whiskey is just made in a different way that let them really easily adapt to this new interest in lighter tasting whiskeys. So this is 72. It's going to be, you know, kind of in the middle of maybe a little bit more robust, but on its way to being that lighter style. And Canadian whiskey in general, usually a little bit lighter. Certainly light in color. Now you get me your glass. I know you don't normally drink whiskey straight.
Not normally, but I have.
It's a special occasion.
Many, many years ago.
All right, so let's get our noses in here. See what you smell. I mean, you've drunk a lot of rye in your life, so you're familiar with the smell.
Yep, that's
what does this one make you think of?
Everything I remember about rye.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know my first whiff had that dusty bottle smell that I've sometimes talked about.
This is in, like you say, in glass and not plastic, so
Yeah.
that really saves it, I think.
But I think there's, you know, you can still get a little oxidation. It's definitely, I'm getting a lot of alcoholic heat on the nose.
Yeah.
But then that rye aroma is there. It's quiet. I don't think it's going to overpower us. Whew, that's coming up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
All right, well, cheers.
Yep.
That's nice.
And still as strong as it
Oh, yeah,
was.
no
But
alcohol.
I remember, no.
Nothing burning off there. This is
evaporation here.
40% alcohol by volume. What do you think? Any flavor notes?
I've never really compared to no.
Right.
It's Canadian Club that I remember.
Okay.
I don't really notice any change in this.
So does it...
But I haven't drank Canadian Club in many, many
I
years.
was going to say, yeah. I know it's not your rye of choice in recent years. So I'm definitely getting some really nice caramely notes, some of that grassiness that you get from rye, but not as much of the pepperiness that you can get in an American rye.
My younger days, maybe I would have drank it straight then if I had known.
Maybe. Well, it's
Well.
probably better that you didn't.
Yeah.
I think you got in enough trouble as it was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, I think, yeah, caramely, grassy, light, pretty smooth, but there's a bite there.
Oh,
right?
there's a
Like
bite.
you know you're drinking alcohol
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I think one of the really interesting things to do with these old bottles is to compare them to their modern day counterparts. And the Canadian whiskey landscape has changed a lot, right? We went, as I said, through this period of people wanting lighter whiskeys in Canada going, we could do that really well. It'll be better than those things you're drinking in the US. And then we've gone back now to wanting really robust flavors in our whiskey and having companies having a lot of different lines instead of, you know, at the time, Canadian Club probably only had 1 or 2 bottlings. And now they've got a bunch. So we've gone back to the thing that is the closest. This, I have to show you how big this is. So this is the mini. This is the giant duty-free version. This is a 1.14 liter, bigger than we even get at home. This is kind of the standard size at the duty-free.
You used to get the 40 ouncer. It's like
Right.
It's equivalent to 40 ounce.
40 ounces of Canadian Club. So this is their 1858. They don't put an age statement on this anymore. Canadian whiskey law, things have to be aged at least 3 years. Unlikely this is 6-year-old minimum whiskey like the other one was, but let's see how it compares. Color-wise, a little bit darker.
A little darker. That's the first thing I noticed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is kind of like a straw, deep straw yellow. And this is definitely kind of a more
Sure, yep.
tawny gold.
Yeah.
Less aroma
Yeah.
right away. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
get
what I
that.
thought.
I didn't get that sort of dusty smell, obviously, because it's a new bottle, but just not getting
Yeah, it's
as
not
much.
coming as
Yeah.
nearly as much.
All right. I don't think the nose is going to give me anything, so I'm just going to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Did you already do it?
No, not yet.
What do you think?
I said I'm not used to it. Yeah, I did get much more to start with.
Yeah.
That taste wise, pretty close. Excuse me. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've drank any of this straight.
Well, so I would say for like our old one, I said I got the grassiness of the rye from, and it didn't have those peppery notes. And this, I'm getting the pepperiness
Yeah,
of the rye.
yeah, more.
Yeah, and I think that really is reflecting that sort of more.
Yeah, I think that's what triggered
Yeah,
the
exactly.
because
No,
that,
it is.
didn't trigger the cough at all, and yet the alcohol strength was right there.
Right. So our old one felt more hot in terms
Yeah.
of the alcohol content. This feels a little bit more integrated and smooth in terms of the alcohol, but that peppery bite
Yeah,
kind of grabs your throat a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to brave another sample. It's really hard for me because I started drinking really on American rye whiskey, and this is a little bit more like that in that it's a lot punchier, where this one is a little bit softer. So definitely it was like, this feels almost more familiar, the modern one.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Water.
But yeah, I'm going to go back to the old one now that I have a benchmark. I always like to have that. Oh man, the caramely notes on the nose are just beautiful on that old bottle.
Yeah.
When you come back to it now after it's had a minute to sit, that caramel really is coming out.
Yeah. Well, I find that too.
Yeah.
Considering I'm not used to comparing.
Yeah, it's much smoother, much softer in character. And again, that kind of might have reflected the time period, what people were looking for. If what you want is vodka and you're having to drink whiskey, then you want something that tastes really soft, right? You don't want something that's punching you in the face.
Well, one of the biggest things I remember from my mom was we were in the States and she loved whiskey sours. And she ordered a whiskey sour at a bar in the States and she hated it. And that's because it wasn't Canadian whiskey.
Right.
So I said, next time you go in, order a CC sour.
CC sour.
Or a VO sour.
Right, because they would have made it with bourbon, probably.
Yeah, that was made with bourbon, and she hated it. And that was why afterwards she'd order it with Canadian whiskey, and she'd be fine with it.
So what did Grandma drink? I know she didn't drink the bottles, but what did she like?
Royal Reserve.
Okay.
Canadian whiskey. And way back, I mean, they played darts. They'd go to the hotel. They'd drink draft beer with a shaker of salt in it. Shake some salt in the draft beer. And then in the later years, all she drank was wine, white wine.
So you have followed in her footsteps with the shift to wine.
Yeah, I've kind of done. I love a good glass of Chardonnay.
Anything else people should know about Grandma?
She loved way back. She loved playing darts. The British influence.
I remember that.
She's had many 180 crests from getting triple
Oh wow.
20s. Yeah, three triple 20s in the throw. She toured all over the place. They went on different tournaments. So she loved doing that. She loved country music. She loved Gene Watson. We've taken her to see Gene Watson.
Nice.
And that was the only kind of music she liked was country. But then we've taken her to jamborees and that, which she loved, and that's where she got into wine coolers.
Yeah,
So White Mountain coolers.
Let's not talk about wine coolers. That was a particular time period, wasn't it?
Yeah, White Mountain out of West Virginia or Ohio, I think it came from.
Well, thank you, Dad, for bringing her back into my life with these little bottles.
Oh, it's fun.
Really
I've been
appreciate
enjoying watching every episode because brings a lot.
You're my #1 fan. Do you hit like on the?
I've been watching on YouTube on my TV, so
Oh, you gotta go. You gotta go in and hit the like button, and so do you.
Yeah.
And you gotta go in and hit the subscribe button,
Oh.
and then you'll get all the episodes. And it'd be great, Dad, if you'd leave me a comment sometime. And the rest of you,
Yeah.
I'd love some comments from you too. And if you want to head on over to my Patreon, maybe you'll see some stuff we cut from this conversation, because that's where I put the bonus content. But thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna make this last sip go down a little better for
it's
you.
ginger ale. Hey.
All right, 1972 Canadian Club with ginger ale.
That's the old one, right?
That's the old one. I mean, you can mix
Don't need much in there because not much left
No,
in
you don't
there.
have much left. Cheers.
Cheers.